Exposed: How a terrified mail-order bride discovers a transformative connection with a rancher's heart. Ruby stepped off the creaky bus and squinted against the harsh Montana sun, the vast expanse of landscape stretching before her like a daunting challenge. The ranch, an endless sea of wild grasses and untamed beauty, seemed to swallow her whole, deepening the pit in her stomach. "What have I done?" she whispered, clutching the letter from Caleb that had promised a new beginning, a desperate outcry escaping her lips. In her small Midwestern town, life dragged on under the weight of farm debts and economic strife. This was her chance, yet as the wind howled across the open land, dread twisted within her. The ranch rose with raw ruggedness, intimidating and foreign, and Caleb, standing stoically by the barn, was as unyielding as the land around him. His strong features did little to ease her unsettling sense of alienation. This marriage had been an arrangement based on convenience, not love, a practical solution to both their burdens. Yet a wisp of hope flickered somewhere inside her, and she feared it might be extinguished by the harsh realities of her new life. With every passing moment she grappled with conflicting emotions. Was this truly where she was meant to be? A surge of anxiety clawed at her insides, while a strange excitement over the potential of discovery tangled with doubts. She wanted to feel safe, wanted to find a partner, yet the distance between them felt insurmountable. How could she build a life with a man's heart remained locked away? Before she could catch her breath, storm clouds loomed on the horizon, swallowing the sun's warmth. That evening, as thunder rumbled and rain began to pelt the roof of the barn, Ruby stumbled upon a box hidden beneath a layer of hay and dust. Its contents were nothing short of enchanting. Caleb's sketches and paintings sprawled like secret dreams captured on paper. The delicate lines revealed warmth steeped in vulnerability, an unexpected glimpse into the man who appeared so impenetrable. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In that moment of revelation, Ruby's heart raced as she realized the potential for understanding and connection in this harsh environment. They were both seeking expression, yet how could she intertwine her own buried passions with his? A longing to paint swelled within her, igniting a spark she had thought extinguished. But the weight of expectation pressed down on her. Would she merely be a step in his life, or could they transform each other? Would the judgment of the community see her past as a shadow over their fragile bond? Amidst the burgeoning connection, whispers began to swirl through town, harsh opinions that threatened to encircle them, stifling hope. A crushing weight settled on Ruby's shoulders. She had come to escape, yet felt trapped by looming circumstance. Just as she began to navigate through a world colored with potential, calamity struck. Caleb faced adversity that endangered not only his father's legacy, but the alliance they were cautiously building. Ruby's heart tightened. Would she choose to support Caleb, the man who revealed a world of creativity, or retreat into her shell as the darkness choked their progress? Beneath the storm of unpredictability, Ruby felt her loyalties torn and her very essence questioned. Shadows of betrayal loomed, the weight of her past pressing down, leaving her with no easy answers. She was on the precipice, standing between two worlds, each demanding an unfathomable sacrifice, each choice fraught with consequence. Would she embrace love, vulnerability, and artistry, or allow the specters of her past to dictate her future? The wind howled outside, drowning out her doubts, but the question still remained. What path would she dare to follow in the face of relentless uncertainty? Ruby's hands trembled as she sat cross-legged on the barn floor, surrounded by Caleb's sketches. Each drawing pulsed with energy, unwritten stories tinged with raw emotion. They were reminiscent of her own talent, long buried under the weight of practicality and obligation. The rain softened to a gentle patter outside, yet the storm inside her raged on. How could she allow herself to dream again when reality felt so unyielding? As she traced the delicate lines of a landscape Caleb had immortalized with pencil strokes, a warmth spread through her. She could no longer ignore the overwhelming urge to have her own voice reflected in this rugged world. But would Caleb understand? Would he recognize their artistic connection as a bridge to navigate their personal barriers? The fear of rejection clawed at her mind, stealing away the budding confidence that swelled within. That night, as Ruby lay in the small guest room, the wind howled outside, matching the tempest swirling in her mind. Memories of her past drifted in like shadows, times she had suppressed her inclination to create out of fear and insecurity. She remembered a dusty attic where she had hidden canvases filled with vibrant colors, remnants of a girl who dared to dream of being an artist. Demons of her former self whispered from the corners of her mind. What if she's not good enough? What if her paintings are ridiculed? She couldn't afford to fail again. The dawn broke with a pale light filtering into her window, igniting her resolve. Ruby didn't come to Montana to drown in doubt. She came to find herself amid the wilderness. Perhaps vulnerability could be a form of power. Steeling herself, she made a determined decision. It was time
to confront Caleb, not just to share his artistic side, but to courageously unveil her own palette. When Ruby emerged into the chilly morning air, she found Caleb rummaging through the barn. The soft light illuminated his rugged features, but the tension carved in his brow stopped her in her tracks. She approached him, swallowing her hesitations. "Can we talk?" She kept her voice steady, fighting against the quiver of anxiety. Caleb's gaze flickered with surprise, and he nodded, setting aside the tools he had been handling. They stood amid the embrace of the barn's rustic ambiance, air thick with unspoken feelings. "What's on your mind?" he asked, his tone a mix of curiosity and caution. Seizing the opportunity, Ruby took a deep breath. "I found your sketches. I want to create too. I want to share my art with you." The words spilled out like a primal scream, releasing the weight she had carried far too long. "But I'm scared of what you might think." A flicker of surprise crossed Caleb's face. "You paint?" His eyes widened, revealing a depth Ruby had yet to explore. "Yes," she replied, "but it feels like such a leap. I don't know if I can be vulnerable again." He stepped closer, his own struggles reflected in his eyes. "Art can be a path, Ruby, a way to communicate truths. If we share our vulnerabilities, we might find deeper connections." Encouraged by his words, they began to discuss their art and aspirations. In the shared glow of creativity, the air crackled with possibility. Yet underlying that connection was the unspoken tension that loomed, a reality bent on testing their alliance amid mounting external pressures. But just as hope began to bloom, a smattering of voices echoed outside the barn, whispers of judgment floating on the wind, ready to threaten the fragile bond they were forging. Would Caleb and Ruby find the courage to defy the expectations that weighed them down? Would they stand united against the noise that threatened to unravel everything they were beginning to build? As the sun's warmth touched their faces, they were left contemplating the challenge ahead, both anticipating and dreading what lay in wait. But change was on the horizon, and Ruby would have to decide. Would she raise her voice in the face of adversity, or would she retreat, allowing her past to haunt her choices once more?
The sun hung low in the Montana sky, casting long shadows across the barn floor as Ruby's resolve transformed into action. The moment had arrived, the moment to bridge the chasm between her buried dreams and her current reality. Caleb's sketches still hovered in her mind, vivid reminders of what she had hidden for so long. But today, amid their shared artistic discourse, she sensed a flicker of strength igniting within her. "Let's begin today," she declared, surprising herself with the firmness of her voice. Caleb blinked at her, caught slightly off guard, but she pressed on. "I want to paint," she declared boldly. "No more hiding." Caleb's eyes brightened with something akin to admiration. "All right then, let's make a plan. What do you want to create?" The weight of his question thrust her into reflection. Her mind raced with images formed through years of silent yearning. Fields dappled with wildflowers, stormy skies bursting with color at dusk, and pregnant shadows dancing over rustic fences. Yet even as she conjured visions, doubt crept like a vine around her heart. What if her work was only a pale imitation of what she hoped to express? I want to paint the landscape," she stammered, yet the tremor in her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "But it has to be more than just an image. It needs to capture the feeling of this place." Caleb nodded, a reassuring smile breaking the solemnity of the moment. "That's a solid start. We can gather here tomorrow, and you can show me your progress. I'll even show you some techniques that work for me." His offer tugged at her heart, igniting a flicker of hope. She had feared that taking this first step might burden Caleb, but his willingness to guide her seemed to knit their fates closer together. Feeling a rush of gratitude, Ruby murmured a thank you. As they finalized the plans, Ruby began to feel a change simmering within, an internal shift that had eluded her for years. She didn't just want to create art, she desired to articulate her emotions, to turn the noise in her head into something beautiful. The upcoming day loomed before her not as a chasm, but as a pathway leading to possibility. Yet, just as she began to lose herself in the thrill of it all, the echoes of doubt returned, haunting her thoughts like a relentless specter. What would they think of her work? Would they share Caleb's appreciation, or would the doubts return, a reminder of her limited past? As the sun sank lower, casting warm golden tones across the barn, a shadow deepened in her heart. The external voices of judgment she sensed outside grew louder with every thought, like a distant thunder that promised rain. Compelled by the rising tide of her fears, Ruby made a decision. "Caleb, I want to have a small gathering, just a few friends, but I'd like to unveil my first painting to them. It'd make it feel more real." Surprise danced in the depths of his eyes, soon replaced by concern. "That's a bold move, Ruby, but are you sure you're ready?" His words struck her. Was she indeed ready, or was she still allowing the specters of her past to dictate her present? Instinctively, she placed a hand on her chest, feeling her heartbeat quicken. "I have to be. If I can do this, maybe I can step into the light of who I was always meant to be." Caleb watched her with palpable intensity, his expression a mix of admiration and calculation. "All right, let's set the date." They stood close, ambition and uncertainty hanging thick in the air. The barn felt different now, a cocoon where she could unfurl her wings. Yet it was equally daunting, reminding her that with every stroke of paint came the risk of exposure. As Ruby prepared to leave, a shuffling outside interrupted her contemplation. The murmurs echoed around them, swirling winds that carried whispers of disapproval. The realization seeped through her resolve, pulling at the edges of her burgeoning confidence. Would she face the judgment spearheaded by the very people she sought approval from? With renewed determination, Ruby clenched her fists. She would stand firm against the voices.
"I'll do it," she whispered to herself as she stepped out of the barn, feeling the rush of autumn air awakening her dormant fire. But as dusk fell, the shadows lengthened and tension thickened. She felt the weight of expectation grow heavier than ever, underscoring the precarious line she had chosen to walk. What awaited her at the unveiling? Would she gain the affirmation she craved, or would she confront an unexpected wave of rejection? The night hung heavy with possibility, and Ruby stood at the precipice, ready to confront both her art and the world that would inevitably react to it. The morning sun streamed into the barn like a beacon, illuminating the dust motes swirling in the air. Ruby stood at the easel, her heart racing as she gazed at the blank canvas awaiting her brush. The promise of the day felt electric, alive with potential. After weeks of hiding, the opportunity to finally express herself was a fragile gift perched on a ledge. One misstep could shatter her resolve. She picked up the brush, the cool wood grounding her as she steadied her breath. It was time to turn the tumult of her emotions into something tangible. As she dipped the brush into a palette filled with vibrant hues, she could hear Caleb's voice gently quipping from the corner of the barn. "Remember, Ruby, don't be afraid of making mistakes. They're part of the process." Mistakes. The word hung in the air, and her stomach churned. Could she afford to mess up, especially now, with all eyes on her? She took a deep breath and focused on the landscape outside the barn window. The wildflowers swayed in the morning breeze, their colors leaping out at her. With each stroke of the brush, the landscape began to emerge, chaotic and vibrant. Yet with each addition came a rising wave of doubt. Was she capturing the beauty of the scene, or was her work mere mimicry, an echo of someone else's vision? As she added strokes of orange and purple to illustrate the morning sky, doubt clawed at her insides. Ruby remembered Caleb's encouraging smile the previous day, but that seemed distant now. She bleakly wondered what he would say if he saw her faltering. Would he see value in this, or would he recognize it as subpar effort? She forced herself to push through the mental fog. It was not just about impressing Caleb or her friends. It was about breaking the chains of her silence. Time slipped away as she lost herself in the work, the initial waves of doubt giving way to a tentative confidence. Slowly, she began to discover her own rhythm, blending colors with fluidity she hadn't anticipated. Each brushstroke became a whisper of her truth, a chance to voice what had remained silent for so long. However, as the painting began to take shape, a growing unease unfurled within her. What awaited her at the gathering in 2 days? Would her friends truly grasp the connection she felt with her surroundings? Or would her deepest fear manifest, mockery masquerading as critique? Frustrated, Ruby stepped back to examine her work. The painting revealed not just what she saw, but what she felt. The serenity of the fields, the drama of the sky, the whisper of the wind caught in the grass. Yet the anxiety clenched around her again like a vice. What if it wasn't enough? "Caleb," she suddenly called out, needing the reassurance now more than ever as the soft echoes of uncertainty cascaded in her mind. He appeared at her shoulder, eyes scanning her work. "This is incredible, Ruby." His gaze held an intensity that made her heart leap. "You've captured the essence of this place beautifully. It feels alive." The warmth of his praise enveloped her, but soon receded as her internal struggle raged on. "But what if they don't feel it the way I do? What if they see only what I can't quite express?" Caleb turned toward her, the weight of his expression shifting. "Then you'll have a conversation. That's what art does. It invites discussion, reflection, and sometimes it challenges our perceptions. The fear of judgment is a small price for the freedom to express yourself." His words lodged themselves deep in her consciousness, igniting a flicker of defiance within her. Ruby made a decision. She would embrace this uncertainty, using it as fuel rather than a foe. The gathering wouldn't just be an unveiling. It would be a confrontation with her fears, with the shadows that had lingered over her for too long. A rock of determination settled in her chest. "Okay," she breathed. "I'll trust in the process, whatever it may bring." As she returned to the canvas, paint splattering and emotions pouring forth, she felt a quiet promise grow. The unveiling was fast approaching, and the real test lay not in the approval she sought, but in her bravery to stand before the world as her true self. With every stroke, she prepared for the inevitable, her past looming behind her, demanding attention. The question lingered: would she find the affirmation she yearned for, or would the revelations forthcoming lead to the rebirth of her confidence? As evening fell and the shadows deepened around her, Ruby took a deep breath. The moment was drawing closer, a threshold awaiting her first step into a new reality. She felt she was not just preparing
to expose her art, but herself. The days felt like a current running too fast as Ruby stood before her easel, the colors swirling in her mind, blending into both a chaos and clarity that often eluded her. Every evening passed in a haze of brushstrokes and self-reflection, her heart battling a tide of anticipation and fear. With each stroke of the brush, she was no longer merely painting. She was rebuilding the fragmented pieces of her identity, stitch by stitch. The morning of the gathering loomed like a thunderstorm on the horizon, and her heart raced in rhythm with each thud of nervousness. Would they understand her? Would they translate her emotions into their own? The loud cacophony of doubt screamed louder than the gentle whispers of her determination. That morning she stood before the mirror, nervously smoothing her hair, taking mental stock of her physical appearance. "You have to be brave today," she whispered to her reflection. Soon those eyes would look back not just at Ruby, but at an artist prepared to be unveiled. The connection she felt to her work transcended mere paint on canvas. It was validation of her journey, both personal and artistic. As she arrived at the makeshift gallery, Ruby's palms dampened against the frame of the canvas she'd transported, her heartbeat matching the thrumming excitement of the gathering. Friends and neighbors milled about, laughter ringing in her ears like a warning bell. She felt like the last piece of a jigsaw puzzle that neither fit nor belonged, and the desire to run began gnawing at her resolve. Caleb had been right. This was more than just art. It was a bridge to intimacy, beckoning her to embrace the risk. But could she really step onto that bridge without trembling beneath the weight of potential judgment? "Ruby," a voice called, breaking her spiral of anxious thoughts. It was Mia and Jess, both radiant in colorful sundresses, their smiles bright and inviting. "Your painting is stunning. Everyone is excited to see it." The warmth of their enthusiasm flickered like a candle against the growing storm of her anxiety. But as she walked through the small crowd, a knot formed in her stomach. What if their reactions did not align with the pride she felt for her work? Could she handle another disappointment, especially one disguised as polite critique? When the moment of truth arrived, quiet enveloped the barn, the atmosphere pregnant with anticipation. Ruby's painting was draped behind a simple cloth, the reveal orchestrating a heartbeat in the room. She felt Caleb's presence to her side, an anchor in her tumult. "Are you ready?" he whispered, his voice a blend of encouragement and challenge. Ruby nodded, her conviction reforming into a tangible weight that steadied her hands. She stepped forward and pulled the cloth away, exposing not only the painting, but also a piece of her soul. Gasps erupted, followed by an anticipatory silence, then applause. Yet, as she faced the assembled crowd, their admiration oddly intertwined with her underlying trepidation. She could see their expressions shift. Some were charmed, while others appeared puzzled, each reaction igniting a small burst in her heart. Questions flared in her mind. Did they see her intentions as she had hoped?
Before she could retract into the safety of silence, a voice rose from the back, bold and unyielding. "What inspired you to paint this?" It was Ben, a local artist known for his sharp critiques, his eyes fixed on her with an unreadable expression. Ruby stammered, her mind racing. It felt raw, exposing. This was her chance to connect, to share her truth. "I wanted to capture a moment, the raw beauty of our surroundings and the emotions tied to it. It's about finding peace in chaos." The weight of what she had revealed shifted the air around them, a slight flicker of understanding glimmering in Ben's eyes. The crowd began to murmur excitedly, connecting upon her words, and Ruby realized there was magic in this exchange. Decisions had to be made now. Would she stand her ground, confront the growing tides of judgment, and continue to unveil her truth? Or should she retreat into the shadows, safe but silent? Caleb's unwavering gaze reminded her this was not just about art, but about a career she yearned to cultivate. In that moment, Ruby understood the power of vulnerability, an illumination that could guide her through the darkness of self-doubt. The gathering was a crucible, and she now felt a clearer sense of purpose ignite within. For every question posed, she would discover her answer. For every voice that critiqued, a challenge to enhance her craft. As the conversation began buzzing around her piece, she sensed the rising energy coursing through the gallery. It ignited something new, a thrilling prospect of her future unfolding from the heart of vulnerability and bravery. But even as the questions rolled off tongues and the applause encouraged her, the lingering question clawed at the edges of her mind. Was she ready to confront the truths within herself that this journey demanded? And as she faced the crowd, the answer hid just beyond the first layer of her courage, begging for exploration. Could she embrace not just the canvas, but what it revealed about herself? The night had just begun, and the real challenge awaited her in the depths of her authenticity. The gathering was alive with energy, yet Ruby felt an encroaching stillness deep within her, a space where self-doubt and determination battled unceasingly. With each question posed by intrigued guests, a part of her soul seemed to unfurl yet another layer of vulnerability. The mere act of sharing her inspiration had uprooted something primordial within. It ignited a hunger for deeper connections, both personally and professionally. "Your portrait evokes such emotion," a nearby woman remarked, her voice filled with sincerity. Ruby caught the flicker of tears in the woman's eyes, a mirror of her own concealed fears and hopes. Each compliment, though warmly received, felt like an unasked query charging through. "Would you open up further?" But as the crowd swirled around her, she could feel the initial thrill begin to morph into a daunting expectation. Her brushstrokes had exposed a part of her she often left untouched, and the scrutiny forced her to confront a challenging reality. What if she was more than an artist struggling for validation? What if she could truly claim this persona and shape her future? "You articulated your feelings beautifully," Caleb said, stepping closer to her. His support felt like an anchor as his eyes searched hers for confirmation. "You know they connect with you because they see your authenticity. Don't hold back." His words resonated in her mind like a clarion call. Authenticity. The concept was one Ruby had danced around her entire life but was just beginning to grasp. The reality of her existence, full of complexities intertwined with her art, begged to be traversed. What lay beneath was deeper than insecurity. It was a glimpse of the tenacity she could reclaim by daring to step into her artistry fully. She fought the instinct to retreat, to plaster on a smile that only masked the uncertainty behind it. In this moment, she comprehended the duality of bravery. It spawned not merely from fearlessness, but from her willingness to embrace the discomfort. "Ruby, how do you interpret chaos?" Ben interjected again, cutting through her thoughts with the same sharpness he brought to his critiques. "It seems to pulse from your work." His assessments held power. They could either build or dismantle. Ruby took a deep breath, drawing strength from the heat of the moment, and replied with newfound clarity. "Chaos is life in its rawest form. It's beautiful, imperfect, and brimming with stories that yearn to escape. My journey has often been chaotic, and I hope that's what people see, honesty in the tumult." As her words slipped from her lips like paint of the canvas, she found relief in their resonance. The small gasps of acknowledgment from the crowd indicated something transformational was occurring. The mere act of verbalizing her dreams and fears carried weight, and Ruby was starting to realize the profound impact of sharing her narrative. The conversation shifted, flowing more freely now, and her previous trepidation began to shift to enthusiasm. Critics dissolved into admirers, questions turned into dialogues. Ruby began to see the glimmers of potential in these exchanges, possibilities waiting patiently for her to stretch out her hands and seize them. Yet even as the applause rang out, punctuating her triumph, Ruby could feel the tether of inadequacy pull taut within her. She had ventured into a new land of engaged self-expression, but the shadows lurking nearby whispered of self-doubt, a reminder that success could be as slippery as paint across an untouched canvas. With each affirmation, Ruby felt the pulse of resolve quicken, but it was accompanied by a rising tide of questions about the path she would now choose. Would she risk further exposure of her innermost self and venture beyond this initial success? Was artistic integrity truly attainable if weighed down by fear of judgment? As the night unfolded, trails of color swirled through her thoughts, but the clarity she thought she possessed became clouded once more. The applause faded to a distant murmur. Curiosity sparked in her heart, but mingled with fear of the unseen. Could she redefine her understanding of success, a transition from mere recognition to a profound connection with her own artistic journey? And amid this emotional swirl, a single truth clawed to the forefront. She would have to confront the very essence of who she was as an artist. As Ruby stood amid the crowd fading into warmth, the question burned like an ember in her heart. Could she translate this glimpse of authenticity into a sustainable passion, or would doubt pull her back into obscurity? The air shimmered with possibility, and as she prepared to engage anew, the night held a tension that promised even deeper explorations ahead. In that moment, she asked herself, would she ignite the courage to dismantle the walls she'd carefully built around her art and finally allow herself to flourish? The answer lingered just at the precipice, urging her to leap into the unknown depths of her true potential. Ruby pressed on, the warmth of affirmation still echoing in her chest, yet shadows of self-doubt clung to her thoughts. The world around her, the lively conversations, clinking glasses, and exclamations of admiration felt distant. Each compliment had sparked a flame, but the flickers of insecurity refused to be extinguished. She navigated through the embrace of gratitude and expectation, her heart racing as she contemplated her next steps. With every discussion, another possibility emerged. Energy swirled, pushing her to confront the paradox of her existence. She yearned for connection, yet fear held her captive. Would this newfound authenticity falter under scrutiny as she delved deeper into her artistic journey? As she leaned into the conversation with Caleb, absorbing his reassurance, a path began to take shape. What if, she mused, this could be more than a single event? It struck her that every stroke of her paintbrush encapsulated a story, hers to tell, hers to share. It had taken so long to gather the courage to express even a fraction of her depth. Would she stifle that potential, or would she cultivate it? The night air brushed against her skin, awakening a desire to step outside the comfort of momentary successes.
The room had transformed into a sanctuary of personal exploration, and she needed to honor it. The lingering question, pulsing like a heartbeat in her mind, was clear. What would it take to break free from her self-imposed confines? Eyes around her glimmered with expectation and admiration, but her focus shifted inward. She had to confront the impending realization dawning within her, a need for greater understanding. The yearning for self-expression was about more than artistry. It was about self-discovery. What if she shared more than just her current creations? As the
night wore on, a vision began to emerge. Ruby would channel her vulnerability into a trilogy of portraits, each representing a stage in her emotional journey toward authenticity, chaos, clarity, and courage. Each piece would not only showcase her talent, but would carry the weight of her lived experiences, inviting viewers into the heart of her narrative. But this path required a leap into the abyss of potential rejection. She could face criticisms and doubts anew, but she understood that every artist faced this struggle. Could she embrace the criticism as a means of growth rather than a reflection on her worth? Standing amongst her peers, she felt the gravity of her decision deepen. Would she take ownership of her narrative and transform it into something undeniably impactful? The risk seemed substantial. The contrast of fear and excitement charged the air around her. In this symphony of emotion, she sensed the signal, a thread calling her toward her art's deeper purpose. With resolve, Ruby locked eyes with Caleb, silently conveying a determination charging beneath her hesitation. "I want to create something meaningful," she said, her voice steady, the crowd dimming slightly as they turned to listen. "Something that resonates and embodies the raw, chaotic beauty of lived experiences, a journey from despair to hope." A ripple of realization washed over her. This was both terrifying and exhilarating. She would harness the chaos she had so often feared to empower her art. The transformations she sought were before her, and with a budding sense of bravery, Ruby was ready to rise again. Her thoughts collided, weaving together dreams of creation and the raw energy thrumming through her veins. Still, a sliver of doubt lingered, whispering fears of failure. As she stepped closer to this new venture, she felt herself wavering, fingers itching to turn back. Would her internal conflict push her to pivot and retreat? Or would she channel her fear into fuel for this monumental endeavor? The answer loomed large, pulsating with intensity and urgency as she braced herself for the unknown. An invitation beckoned, the landscape of her psyche illuminated by this newfound reckoning. The moment had come to confront her deepest fears and forge ahead. How far would she have to go before she finally broke free from the chains of uncertainty? As she stood at the crossroads of self-discovery, the vibrations of possibility reverberated in her core. But the pressing question lingered. Was she finally ready to expose her vulnerability, or would the weight of expectation pin her down once more? Ruby stood at the precipice of a decision that felt monumental. The echoes of the past danced around her, reminding her of the countless times she had stifled her ambitions. Here, in a crowded room, framed by the vibrant lights and candid smiles, the weight of expectation pressed against her chest like a heavy cloak. Yet the flicker of possibility swirled in her mind, illuminating a vision faint but fierce, her trilogy of portraits: chaos, clarity, and courage. She whispered to herself, the titles imbuing her thoughts with structure, a promise of direction. She imagined each canvas sprawling before her, an adrenaline rush coursing through her veins as she envisioned how vibrant the colors would be, how deeply they would resonate with anyone willing to look. Even as she sketched the outlines of this new journey in her mind, the specter of doubt loomed large. Engaging in an authentic portrayal of chaos meant digging through the rubble of her own experiences. Would she unearth emotions better left buried, or could she craft from those fragments something empowering? The questions clawed at her, each one armed with the potential to thwart her progress. Ruby stepped out of the gathering, seeking solace beneath a sprawling oak outside. She inhaled the crisp air, grounding herself, trying to shake off her reverberating insecurity. The stars twinkled above, illuminating a vast sky that felt impossibly inviting, yet so distant, much like her progress seemed in that moment. She reflected on her past works, each brushstroke a silent testament to her struggles, yet pending a narrative link. She had long only explored the surface of her emotions, but what if she reached deeper? What if she courageously presented her internal chaos as something raw and breathtaking? The thought both thrilled and terrified her. What if chaos depicted her childhood, a hurricane of instability that stifled her creativity? Memories of uncertainty, nights spent hiding beneath covers, or the frenzied chaos of family fights played through her mind like a warped film reel. Heart pounding, she pushed deeper. Would she portray her vulnerability, the essence of her pain, to elevate her art? Her heart raced with each passing thought. The need for clarity echoed back, crystallizing her memories. The second portrait held the potential to encapsulate the transition, the moment she found solace in expression. Could clarity radiate the efforts it took to embrace her artistry? The moments she spilled ink and paint onto the page, ruminating amidst the colors. A new determination materialized. She grabbed her sketchbook from her bag, pages filled with unfocused doodles and half-formed ideas. This time, she would transform those chaotic marks into a coherent visual lexicon. Inspiration thrummed beneath her fingertips, igniting visions of layering paint until raw emotion seeped through and resonated with others. Finally, the notion of courage stirred the deepest parts of her being. This final piece would encompass the leap she would take into vulnerability, the acknowledgement of past failures and their impact on her narrative moving forward. Would she be ready to expose herself fully? Would she grasp the courage to transform her fear into fuel, a vehicle for others to connect with her through their shared struggles? Despite the uncertainty clawing at her, a heavy thought lodged in her mind. The transformations she sought would not emerge without risk, without confrontation. Standing there, against the oak, she made a crucial decision. This moment would mark a turning point. She would not allow fear to dictate her path. Instead, she would wield it like a paintbrush. Locked in determination, Ruby felt the remnants of self-doubt start to shift. The underlying anxiety that had once threatened to swallow her whole now simmered as a backdrop. A stark reminder of all that could go wrong, an echo she would channel into her work. Could she now step into her true self, facing the reality of her struggles without cringing away? With a swift, renewed energy, she began committing ideas to paper that she had kept hidden. The chaos, the complexity, the courage it would take to expose. But at that moment, as she began sketching, another realization loomed. What if she not only faced her past, but also invited others to share theirs alongside hers? A profound question shot through her. Would this venture invite connection or exacerbate isolation? Ruby's heart beat wildly, a blend of fear and excitement. A line walked by many artists, one she was determined to traverse. The canvas was blank for now, crisp and clean. But would it remain so, or transform with every brushstroke into a testament of her evolution? As she stood with her sketchbook poised for creation, she couldn't ignore the flood of excitement cascading through her veins. Was this the start of something monumental, or merely another fleeting idea? Each heartbeat pulsed with urgency, inviting her forward into unfamiliar territory. The weight of expectation shifted.
She wasn't merely creating art, she was crafting a bridge to her authentic self. But a new question surfaced, taunting yet alluring. Was she ready to share not only her journey, but her truth with the world? Ruby awoke the next morning suffused with a strange mix of excitement and trepidation. The sun pierced through her bedroom window, illuminating the sketchbook that lay open on her desk. Last night's fervent scribbles beckoned her like sirens in the fog, both alluring and disorienting. As she traced the outlines of her tentative ideas with a finger, doubt whispered softly in her ear. How could she embrace the chaos she once feared? Instinctively, she reached for her brush, the familiar weight grounding her in the present. Today required action. She wanted to dance with the potentiality of her portraits rather than merely ponder their existence. Stepping onto her small terrace, Ruby scanned the peeling paint of the world around her. Each aspect spoke to her, a field of inspiration awaiting her discovery. A rusted bicycle abandoned in the grass, a sun-bleached fence standing sentry against the elements. What if she incorporated these fragments of life into her art? What if they narrated her own tumult? She walked back inside, placing her brush down. It was time to confront the very idea of chaos head-on, the cornerstone of her first portrait. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, she pulled the sketchbook closer, the rhythmic scratch of charcoal ringing like a drum in her mind. She painted her past anew, rendering the blurred faces of her childhood and the cacophony of her home. Each stroke unleashed a torrent of memory, pain, laughter,
Fear, a raw vulnerability cutting deep and exposing yet another facet of herself. With each depiction on paper, something inside Ruby shifted. The more she embraced chaos, the softer it felt. What was initially a tempest became a kaleidoscope of emotions, each one deserving expression. Vulnerability injected color into her previously monochrome planes, a riotous blend of heartbreak and healing illuminating her newfound clarity. But as the sun set outside, so did the light within her transform. Clarity began its ascent in accentuating the steps she took to navigate her inner turmoil. The realization struck her. She hadn't created art simply to depict. She created to connect, to express, to reflect the intricate dance of chaos and order in others. She poured her essence into clarity, translating her process of awakening into vivid imagery that echoed her desire for authenticity. Yet self-doubt lurked in murky corners. Who would truly understand her journey? Would the audience embrace her as she stripped away the armor she wore? Was she brave enough to dive deeper, even as she invited others to join her? Determined to face her fears, Ruby turned her attention to courage. This piece felt like an old, heavy coat she had worn for years, an unwanted reminder of her fragility. She inhaled deeply, visualizing the courage that lay dormant within her, waiting to be awakened. What if courage isn't the absence of fear, but the steadfast decision to continue pursuing her vision in spite of it? A flicker of bravery ignited within her, and she began sketching. Layers of lines and curves morphed into a testament of resilience, depicting moments of public exposure that both terrified and exhilarated her. The artwork embodied her struggles and triumphs, building strength against the looming fear of vulnerability. However, the weight of accountability tied her thoughts like chains. Her heart raced at the thought of sharing this piece with the world, of inviting others to witness her blunders and missteps, the remnants of her battered spirit. Would they see it as a profound moment of connection, or merely as a spectacle? Ruby wrestled with these questions throughout the night, pouring herself into her sketches, watching the shadows of doubt wrestle against her amusement. But as dawn broke, determination began to seep through every pore. She would not hide. Her trilogy would be her raw voice, a heady blend of all she had experienced, drenched in the essence of artistic authenticity. Just as she felt a sense of clarity forming about her next steps, an unexpected notification pinged from her phone.
It was a message from an old friend, someone she hadn't spoken to in years, someone with whom she had shared part of her turbulent history. "I heard you're creating a new series. I'd love to see how you're navigating this journey. Are you ready to share your story?" The question hung heavily in the air, echoing the very sentiments Ruby had been grappling with. She felt the pulse of anticipation coursing through her. A moment of truth
loomed ahead, one rife with opportunity as well as potential obstacles. Would she respond with the openness her heart craved, or was this invitation merely another juncture to push her back into the shadows? With her heart thundering, Ruby contemplated how to navigate this critical intersection between fear and authenticity, one that might define not only her art but also her relationships. The words trembled on her lips, waiting for her decision. Would she step forward, ready to share her truth, or hold back, suffocated once again by the weight of expectation? Ruby stood in the barn, surrounded by the scent of fresh hay and warmth radiating from the wooden beams. The experience of the unveiling lingered in her mind like a melody, echoing the laughter and connections forged during that transformative evening. Now, months later, she was no longer the hesitant mail-order bride who arrived in Montana. She was a woman who had faced her fears, embraced her art, and carved out a space where her voice could thrive. The trilogy of portraits she had envisioned, chaos, clarity, and courage, were not just artworks. They were milestones of her journey, moments of vulnerability now captured on canvas. As she prepared for the upcoming gallery showing of her trilogy, Ruby felt a solid confidence coursing through her veins. Each brushstroke was infused with purpose, representing a chapter of her life that had previously felt too daunting to explore. She recalled the chaotic scenes of her childhood, the therapeutic clarity of her artistic emergence, and finally, the courage it took to put her heart on display for the world to see. This was her triumph, and she felt deserving of every ounce of recognition her work brought. "You've truly transformed," Caleb remarked one afternoon, his voice breaking through her reverie. He stood across the barn, framed in the warm glow of the light streaming in through the open doors. His admiration sparked a sense of pride within her. "The strength in your portraits conveys not only your journey, but resonates with the community. People see themselves in your work." His validation lit a fire already igniting in her heart. She recalled the trepidation wrapped around her when fear threatened to silence her creativity. But now that fear was merely a reminder of how far she had come. Weeks had passed since the unveiling, and she had received invitations to showcase her art across various local venues. Each acceptance, each moment of recognition, signified she was not just an artist emerging from shadows. She was being acknowledged, establishing her competence within the artistic community. Her confidence solidified as she encountered inspiring words from viewers, each reflection echoing the shared experiences of vulnerability she sought to present. "Art invites connection," she had told a group of aspiring artists during a workshop earlier that week. "It honors our tales and binds us through understanding. Let your authenticity shine." In that moment, she saw their eyes brighten with understanding, and a shared gasp erupted among them. The interaction, her voice, once stifled by fear, could now inspire others to carve their paths too. The day of the gallery show was buzzing with excitement. As guests filed in, Ruby felt a flutter of nerves mixed with exhilaration. This was her moment, not only to showcase her work, but to embody every lesson learned and every ounce of courage forged. When she stepped to the front to address the crowd, the whispers subsided into eager anticipation. "Thank you for being here tonight," she began, steadying her voice. "These portraits represent the chaos and clarity within us all, the courage it takes to embrace our truth. What you see is a reflection of my journey, and I hope it inspires you to share yours." The audience erupted into applause, and Ruby felt a wave of genuine fulfillment wash over her. She locked eyes with Caleb, whose encouraging smile gave her strength as she continued to unfold her story. The vulnerability she had once feared became a bridge, connecting her to active discussions with guests eager to share their experiences. Each conversation built upon the last, revealing a rich tapestry of shared human struggles and triumphs. As the night deepened, Ruby could see her vulnerability had transformed into power, a power that resonated loud and clear. She was more than just an artist. She had found her place and established a voice demanding respect and recognition. Looking around at the people speaking animatedly about their interpretations of her art, she felt an overwhelming sense of achievement settle comfortably within her. No longer confined by the shadows of her past, Ruby now stood fully illuminated, confident in her accomplishments, both personal and professional. She had proven to herself that vulnerability was not a hindrance but a strength, and her journey had brought her to a place of true personal fulfillment. As guests shared insights and stories inspired by her work, Ruby claimed her newfound identity with palpable gratitude. She was ready to embrace the future, knowing that each moment, past, present, and future, contributed to a vibrant canvas of life. She had bridged the chasm of fear and emerged victorious, a testament to the spirit of resilience, clarity, and courage. This was her achievement, a journey transformed through art and authenticity, and the fire now blazing within her would only grow brighter. You need to subscribe now to our channel. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let more stories like this thrive. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Ruby's incredible journey. And remember, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's keep spreading the message of personal growth and resilience. When she stepped to the front to address the crowd, Ruby claimed her newfound identity with palpable gratitude. She was ready to embrace the future, knowing that each moment, past, present, and future, contributed to a vibrant canvas of life. She had bridged the chasm of fear and emerged victorious, a testament to the spirit of resilience, clarity, and courage. This was her achievement, a journey transformed through art and authenticity, and the fire now blazing within her would only grow brighter. You need to subscribe now to our channel. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let more stories like this thrive. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Ruby's incredible journey. And remember, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's keep spreading the message of personal growth and resilience. This was her achievement, a journey transformed through art and authenticity, and the fire now blazing within her would only grow brighter.